I was always very lively and, among my friends, but outside of that.
For more than 30 years, James Garner carried a secret that could have shattered the image the world believed in. To audiences, he was the fearless hero, calm, confident, and bold enough to challenge powerful Hollywood studios when they tried to control him. He seemed untouchable, the kind of man who could walk away from anything and still land on his feet. But behind that easygoing smile was a private battle he rarely spoke about, a struggle that followed him from a difficult childhood all the way to the bright lights of Hollywood. For decades, Garner lived with a hidden weight, and only later would the world understand why. Garner was born James Scott Bumgarner on April 7, 1928, in Norman, Oklahoma. His early years began like many others, but tragedy struck when he was just 5 years old and his mother suddenly died. Her loss shattered the family, and soon James and his brothers were sent to live with relatives while their father struggled to rebuild their lives. When their father remarried, the boys returned home, but the new stepmother was harsh and abusive, leaving emotional scars that Garner carried for the rest of his life. By his teenage years, home no longer felt safe. He worked whatever jobs he could find, pumping gas, lifeguarding, even modeling swimsuits, anything that kept him away from the house. Eventually, he dropped out of school and searched for a way out. At 16, during the final years of World War II, Garner lied about his age and joined the Merchant Marine. Not long after, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and was sent to fight in the Korean War. Serving as a rifleman and scout on the front lines, he faced brutal conditions and constant danger. Garner was wounded twice in combat and later received 2 Purple Hearts, though he rarely talked about the experience. When he returned home at 24, he had survived war, loss, and hardship, but he still didn't know what direction his life would take. A chance opportunity eventually led him to Los Angeles, where he worked as an extra in a stage production of the Caine Mutiny court-martial. Night after night, he watched legendary actor Henry Fonda perform, studying the natural style that made the performance feel real rather than theatrical. Something about it sparked his curiosity. Acting suddenly seemed possible. Garner began taking small roles in television and film, slowly learning the craft until a breakthrough arrived in 1957 with the television series Maverick. Playing the witty gambler Brett Maverick, Garner brought humor and realism to the Western genre, quickly becoming one of America's most recognizable television stars. But fame brought new battles. Garner soon discovered the harsh realities of Hollywood contracts, where studios treated actors more like property than partners. When Warner Brothers tried to suspend him during a writer's strike and extend his contract unfairly, Garner did something almost unheard of at the time. He sued the studio. Against the odds, he won. The victory shook Hollywood and helped challenge the powerful studio system, but it also made him enemies and temporarily limited his opportunities. Years later he returned to television with another iconic role in the Rockford Files, playing private investigator Jim Rockford. The show became a massive success and earned Garner an Emmy, but the demanding stunts and long shooting schedules took a serious toll on his body. Injuries piled up, damaged knees, chronic back pain, and worsening arthritis. When the show ended, another legal battle began after the studio claimed the hit series had somehow lost money. Garner once again fought in court, exposing Hollywood's notorious creative accounting, where studios manipulated financial records to avoid paying actors their share. Through all these struggles, one constant remained in his life: his wife, Lois Clark. The two met at a party in 1956 and married just 2 weeks later, a decision many thought reckless at the time. Yet their marriage lasted nearly 6 decades. Lois, who had no interest in Hollywood glamour, became Garner's anchor. Together they raised 2 daughters and built a quiet life away from the chaos of the entertainment industry. Garner often said that without Lois, he might not have survived the pressures of fame. As the years passed, the physical toll of Garner's life caught up with him. In 1988 he underwent quintuple bypass heart surgery, and his health slowly declined. Arthritis and past injuries made walking difficult, and in 2008 he suffered a severe stroke that limited his mobility and speech. Garner spent his final years largely out of the public eye, surrounded by family, until he passed away from a heart attack on July 19, 2014, at the age of 86. Yet the most revealing part of his story emerged near the end of his life. In his memoir, The Garner Files, he finally spoke openly about the truth he had hidden for decades. He had lived with deep depression throughout much of his adult life. The roots of that struggle stretched back to his childhood losses, the trauma of war, and the relentless pressures of Hollywood. In an era when men rarely discussed mental health, Garner simply carried the burden quietly, hiding it behind humor, charm, and the relaxed confidence audiences loved. For most of his career, fans believed they were watching a man completely at peace with himself. In reality, James Garner was fighting a private battle every day. And perhaps that's what made him so compelling on screen. The warmth, the wit, the humanity, it all came from someone who understood struggle but refused to let it define him. In the end, when the world finally learned the truth, it didn't diminish his legacy. If anything, it made people admire him even more, not just as a star, but as a man who faced his demons and kept going anyway.